the humans, hippies, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you're lucky enough to be doing it to. I'm Bushka and Blitz, and as you may have heard, we have a thing coming up called ratings battles. Well, hello there, humans, hippies, earthlings, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you're lucky enough to be doing it to. I'm Bushka and Blitz, and as you may have heard, we've got a thing coming up called rating battles. Rated battles, ranked battles, you might know them as from World of Warships PC and World of Tanks PC. Basically, they are an opportunity for you to test your skills against other players on the server in a much more organized and well, rated format. Basically, you're going to be jumping on and doing a game against other people who are rated within a certain number of your personal rating. You can be ranked up or down depending on your performance. You get ratings points for wins. You get lose rating points for losses and draws and such. And that's all been covered by other people in other videos. And I don't want to get too stuck in it, but the end result is you can earn more credits, you can get prizes. Wargaming are about to let us know what those are. And you can go up on the Hall of Fame and you can see where you rate compared to your mates, compared to other people in your clan, and compared to other people on the server. And that's all really good and obvious. But what about for those of you who want to know what you should be spending your spare parts on, and what you should be gearing up, and what tank you should be trying to bring into the ratings battle to do your very best? Now, that's what I'm here for. I'm going to talk to you about the best tanks to drive at Tier 9 and Tier 10, bearing in mind that when you're driving in Tier 9, the matchmaker will try and match you up against people with the same ratings, but that will also affect you. You may actually end up in games against Tier 10 players. At least that's how I understand it at the moment. So what I'm going to do is go through and give you an idea on which tanks I think the best tanks for driving at Tier 9, both medium, heavy, and TD. And then we're going to duck on up to Tier 10, and we're going to talk about the best tanks in terms of mediums, heavies, and TDs all over again. Now, there are no light tanks, which is a good thing, okay, because it saves me from talking about them. The medium tanks, it's going to be a bit of a kerfuffle. My favorite medium at Tier 9 that I'd recommend would probably be this one here. But if you're going to be going up against Tier 10 tanks, it's hard to go past the T54. The PTA and other tanks may well do okay compared to other Tier 9 tanks. But when you have to play against Tier 10 tanks, there really are not a lot of other tanks at this tier that can hold a candle to the 54. Now, it's been nerfed and it's copped a flogging, and it is not the god tank it once was, but it is certainly capable of competing. And that's really important, because if you have to win to get ratings points, you want to have the biggest impact on the game. Tanks like the Type 61, the E50, the PTA, the M46, they all have weak points that I think are going to be very difficult to overcome. The pattern has very, very poor penetration numbers across the board. Well, they're now about the same as the 54, but it's not as well armored. It's got very, very similar DPM, got better gun depression and everything. But if you're going to be facing other tanks that are up tiered, like, man, you could be coming up against a Death Star or something, and you're going to be driving something that a Death Star can pen frontally, no problems whatsoever. And that being the case, you want to be as low to the ground, you want to have the best camo you can, and you want to be able to actually get through the fight. And that's what the 54 can do. I would be driving it with this gun, the 100mm D54. The reason for that is pretty obvious if you've been driving this tank for a while at all, and if you've been following on from the nerfs. This tank, when coupled with the calibrated shells and your enhanced gun loading drive, your vertical stabilizer, all those kind of things, and your improved armor, plus you're running it with a engine accelerator, because it already has outstanding mobility, this tank then gets up to a very solid penetration model for a Tier 9 medium. 230mm of AP pen and 284mm of heat pen. And that's going to help you tremendously. It's still got 8.44 rounds a minute, so that's just Jim Dandy. It's still every bit the quick tank it was, and it's still got at least a modicum of armor, as opposed to something like a PTA or a Type 61. The Cent 7-1 would be my second pick, just because I love it for its gun depression, and I have a very, very soft spot in my heart. But if I'm being honest, if you're going to have to compete against Tier 10 tanks, and if you absolutely want to be able to do the business, I'd go with the T-54. Moving right along to heavy tanks. This is very much the same thing. I have a lot of heavy tanks I adore at this tier, namely this thing, the VK4502B, and this thing, the Conqueror. Now, the Tier 9 heavy tanks I think are more competitive than their Tier 10 counterparts. However, the best heavy tank I think for driving at this tier in this whole schmozzle of ratings would be this one, the ST1. I've got a video coming up about the ST1. It is why it's my favorite Tier 9 heavy tank, and that's pretty important. All of that video was made with just the basics of very, very basics, and the tank performed like an absolute machine. I was solo and I think I won about 14 of 15. Like, it was crazy, crazy good. I didn't even have improved optics on it, but you know, I should probably put those on there now. I would be running this tank with gun rammer, I would be running it with enhanced gun lane drive, and I would be running it with vertical stabilizer and armor. And if you can afford to, obviously you get up to vertical stabilizer, you've got to go through this, but I would be going for the increased traverse, the improved control. And it's pretty important. It's got crazy amounts of armor. The armor profile on it is excellent. And you can see it's got a very similar armor profile. If we have a look at the IS-4, see the chassis on the armor, and see at the back how there's that very distinctive dip. They're all very awkward angles. And the side, you can see the IS-4 is even a little bit chunkier, but the side, everything is very similar. And what that means is while you're turning and wiggling and jiggling, your armor angle changes quite markedly, and it means it can be very difficult to pen. Plus, this turret has gun depression and the ability to go hull down, and the weak point on top there, right up the top, that very little hatch at the front, it's not that weak. It's still sloped, and if you are hull down and moving around, it can be quite a tough nut to pen. It's a solid side scraper. It's an intimidating tank, and if you get up tiered, it can handle its business quite comfortably. If I had to pick another tank to run at tier 10, I would go with probably something along the lines of the VK4502B or the E75. They both have the armor profile to deal with anyone, really. Big flat sides, very strong German tanks. I prefer the VK45 to the Mouse, which is just me personally. It is not something that I will push on anyone. That's just my personal play style. It's a rear turreted heavy tank, and at a time when heavy tanks are making somewhat of a resurgence, the VK4502B is very, very welcome indeed. You can't really go wrong with that or the E75, and I'm a massive fan of the Conch just because of the gun. The 120mm, 6.79 rounds a minute, 0.299 dispersion, and 3.1 second aim time, with 259mm of pen on your AP rounds. And you can see the gun here when I'm talking to you about that, 3.344, which is not amazing, but it's pretty good anyway. Another 120mm. So we pump on up and we go to tier 10. Oh, actually, no, I forgot. We're doing TDs. Tier 9 TDs. I would go with the T30. It's got a very nice 150mm gun. It's got the ability to go hull down, and if they want to pen you, they've generally got to use premium ammunition, which will cause them to do less damage if they want to go through the cheeks, either side of the gun mantlet. You wouldn't want to be driving the Tortoise, I don't think. Objects, a Dark Horse, it can be quite devastating, but you want to be mounting a 150mm gun. The Jag Tiger is just too big. It's too big. It's got too big of flat sides. If you get up tiered, you're going to struggle. The T95 is just too bloody slow. If you're doing rated battles, you want to be in the thick of the action ASAP, because the further you go on to rated battles, the better the people you go up against are going to be. And look, let me get this straight. at the lower end of rated battles, if you can play and you're a solid player and you have pretty much any tank, you're going to be able to get through. Once you start getting towards the middle and the top end of rated battles, that's when you're going to find things being very, very competitive compared to a public game, and you're going to need to be in the right tank to maximize your chances. And the T30 is that right tank. Bit of gun depression, the ability to go hull down, and a very, very big dose of alpha. The gun is not amazing. You've got 2 Tier X guns there. You've got the 120, leave that alone. Go with the 155mm, 4 rounds a minute, 276mm a pen on your AP rounds, 640 alpha, 0.353 dispersion, and a big aim time. Not great, but you know, if you're going to drive a TD at this tier, I'd go with the T30 first. Then I'd probably roll along with something like, the Object 704, the Jag Tiger. The Jag I'd probably go with first, just because it's got amazing damage per minute numbers. And at least if you're going to get pushed on in this thing, they're going to pay a price for it. So there you go. That's the tier 9 stuff out of the way. Switch up to tier 10, and we may as well start with the TDs. Go where we meant to carry on from. This is going to be really interesting. My personal favorite for this kind of thing would be the Object 263. It's just incredibly mobile and has amazing DPM numbers. But I'm not sure how the meta is going to shake out. You're going to have a lot of people as you progress who know how to play. You won't be able to just get away with Blue Murder like you can in this thing against lower end players. They're going to be very, very thoughtful about the way they approach the game. And this tank can be exploited if they can get to the sides and the flanks. But a lot like the Jag that I was talking about earlier, this thing is in the hands of an experienced and good quality driver. This thing's brutal, you know. If they push on you, they're going to pay. The DPM numbers are off the scale. The gun is very good in terms of accuracy. 8.38 rounds a minute with 460 average alpha. I mean, you can see straight away why I like it, because it will pump out damage and it will reliably do damage. And a big part of winning these ratings battles is just going to be wiping the other team. And it's going to come down to whoever can focus the most fire. And this thing, it's hard to beat for that. 0.29 dispersion, absolutely brilliant. APCR as a premium ammo, which I'm a big fan of as opposed to heat, and 290mm of penetration on your AP. Zippity doodah. If I was going to go with any equipment on it, I would be pushing on for the Armour. The Armour is going to make a big difference. Enhanced gun lane drive, the improved control, and the vertical stabilizer. They're the key in that order too. Or actually, I'd go Armour, and then the improved control, then enhanced gun lane drive, and then V-stab. That would be the order I'd be going for. After that, you don't really have a lot of choices that won't work. As long as it's got a big TD gun on it, it's going to be a fearsome beast in a tier 10 ratings battle. And if you run into tier 9 tanks, some of these TDs will just really be nasty. Very tough to deal with. And it's one of the reasons why, particularly the mediums, you're going to see a lot of these Death Stars. Death Stars are tanks that will equalize a lack of skill. And the reason being that if you can land 2 shots in a Death Star, that's quite often going to do over 2,000 damage. And that means that if you're running up against Death Stars and you're in, say, I'll show you what I mean. You're in a Patton or a PTA or a Type 61, a Death Star can legitimately use premium hash and go straight through you for a top end roll of 1,600 damage. And that's really going to put a dent in any hopes you've got of doing well. And if it hits the side of an E50, well, good night, Saigon. T54 also, just so you know, if you want to hit the T54, in that space above the tracks and below the turret, you can quite often squeeze a Hesh round into there and they will not be doing you any favors at all. So I'd go Object 263 first. Then you've got a lot of tanks that you're going to need. Mobility is going to be big for this too. If you've got a good team and everyone goes the one flank and you're in, say, a Jaegeroo, you're going to be left isolated and there's every chance that you're going to be picked off and destroyed. And as much as the Jag can be absolutely monstrous, lack of mobility is going to be tough. The way the game works now, without the binoculars, or without the synergy of camo net and binoculars, means you can't hide these big dinosaurs like you used to be able to. You used to be able to put the YAG anywhere on the map, and because of that silly bloody camo net and the extended view range you got, yeah, you got stupid numbers, and it really negated the weak point of this tank, which is it's bloody enormous. I mean, I think that's fair enough. I think it was stupid that camo net gave a 25% bonus to a tank like this, and while it was giving it that bonus, you also got a 25% bonus to view range. It was just nuts. 15% bonus, sorry. It was really silly, and that's gone now, so that's good. 183 is mobile enough to keep it up. It's not that strong armor-wise, but it's an absolute abject disaster for anyone that gets in its way. And I think it's going to do very well at ranked battles too, worse luck. I really wish it didn't, but I think it's going to do well. And I think if you're looking for a sure bet in the TDs, this thing is very hard to go past, because when it hits, they stay hit. And if you can just be aggressive and get a couple of hits in, you're going to be doing something for your team. I've got a big soft spot for the T110E4 as well. I would have absolutely no problems running the T110E4 and may well run it, but I'm probably going to run the Object 263 more than anything else. The grill's going to struggle. And obviously this is all, like, guys, there are people out there who are really, really good in these tanks, and I think I could probably make a living with the grill in ratings, but if I'm talking about just an absolute vanilla player who is middle of the road, then the grill's probably not your pick. It's fast enough to keep up with everyone else, but if you fall behind and you start trying to get fancy with it, people will start pushing, and this is my hope, you get team play, things like the grill are going to have to camp, and that's going to be tough. So there's no really wrong decision in TDs. They are very strong at the moment. Their guns are very big, and because of the fact that they have such high penetration numbers on their guns, they don't have to resort to premium all that often. And if you don't have to resort to premium all that often, then zippity-doo-dah. I mean, you're doing big damage. Let's talk about heavy tanks. Or actually, we'll go to mediums first. There are a few options here. I think the STB one will be fine. I won't be touching the FV4202. I think the Object 140 will be fine. I really think the T62A will do well. It's still got great damage per minute numbers. It's still got a solid armor profile for a medium tank. It's still got amazing camouflage and is really, really quick. I mean, I'll probably live with the 140 or the 62A pretty much every time out. The Leopard 1, we all know the story with the Leopard 1. If you're good enough to drive it and get the most out of it, then it's going to be a good tank. If you are not good enough, it is going to be a horrible tank. And if you're lining up in ranked and you're seeing Leopard 1s and you get the wrong map, then your team is going to be really coming right out of the gate at a disadvantage, especially if the people driving them are not really bloody skilled. Because, honest to God, people will not... Here's the meta that I'm envisioning. People are going to worry about losing rating. And the higher you go up, the more they're going to worry about it. And what you're going to find is that a lot of people are going to camp or attempt to camp or get to a choke point and hold a strong point. And I mean, I hope that doesn't happen, but I've got a big, big feeling this is how it's going to go. And that means that if you've got to push on people in a Leopard 1, that is a disaster. And the reason you'll have to push on them is because, if someone gets a strong point and they're holding, 2 caps and they're winning on points and they're going to win the game, you can't just sit back, especially not as you go up the ratings and people learn how to play. And tanks like the Leo are definitely not capable of taking a shot. That all being said and done, I know guys that are going to make a hell of a lot of a killing in the Leopard 1. But that's just, that's them. M48 Patton, I've always adored. It's a fun tank. It doesn't have anything particularly amazing going for it. But since they buffed it, it is a low-key strong tank. If you have spare parts to spend on it and you want to get onto it, it'll work. But again, I'd still be going with the Russians. And I'd be going with calibrated shells because it's going to be really, really important to pen. I mean, that extra 25 millimeters of shell pen is really important. The difference between having to switch onto a premium round in this and not is drastic. 260 alpha versus 310. You can't afford to be missing shots. So where are we? Sorry. So I'd be going calibrated shells and then protected modules, just because, you know, again, ammo racks and suspension and things like that are going to be key. I hate having ammo rack damage more than just about anything else. And obviously optics. I'm going optics on everything. Don't go camo net. Optics has to be done. Now, when it gets to the enhanced gun lane drive, that's not an absolute necessity. I may actually run the supercharge, because again, penetration is really, really important. And APCR, which mediums fire as their standard ammo at this tier, well, guess what? That loses more penetration value over distance than AP rounds. AP rounds have the best in terms of loss of penetration between the two APs. Heat is a different kettle of fish. Heat is just a chemical, high explosive anti-tank. It injects molten. You don't need to worry about that. Heat doesn't lose the pen over distance, which is one of the reasons why it also used to be so overpowered in the T-54. Then Armour, and I'd go with Engine Accelerator. You have the most ridiculously good traverse numbers anyway, so don't stress about that. Vertical Stabilizer, obviously, or you could go lower dispersion. Again, I wouldn't think it'd be worthwhile. 25% to module repair speed, and then 10% to consumable cooldown, just so you can always keep your module damage under control. I'm all about that. That's why I'm running on all my tanks nowadays. Oh, that's an old one, sorry. I'm running protective kit, full rations, and full fuel. Keeping module damage down is actually an effective boost to your performance in battle and allows you to bring your gun to bear more often. So I'd probably be going with the Russians. The STB-1 is another one that'll work. I'd be steering clear of the FV4202, the Leo 1 unless you're good enough. E50M I really like. It's taken a step back since they nerfed penetration numbers, because it's never had great damage per minute numbers like the Russians do. It's big as a house, and I've got a sneaking suspicion you're going to be running into a lot of TDs and you don't have binoculars anymore. And that kind of can be a bit tough. 50M's sturdy, like it'll be a middle of the road medium for me, just like the M48A1. My top two would be 62A and the Object 140, in whichever order you feel. Particularly for me, it's going to be 62A and then the STB-1. Let's move on to the heavies. And this is where we see the tank that everyone is going to be driving in ranked, and that I'm going to be calling for a general nerf on, because it's just a joke. This thing's too strong. Just too strong. Its armor profile, its mobility, its gun's trollish, but it's got APCR as premium rounds, so you can go to APCR and not have to worry about spaced armor or anything like that. And big deal, you've got a trollish gun, because most of your activity is going to be taking place in the face of the enemy, and it's just got the best armor profile for that. You can hide that lower glacis and just be incredibly tough to pen. People have to go to premium ammunition against you, which straight away lowers the damage that you're going to be taking right across the board since they nerfed premium ammunition. The rate of fire isn't amazing. None of that is going to set you alight. It has very good AP penetration, 273 millimeters of AP penetration, because I'm running calibrated shells, and you probably should be too. Your DPM is not what will win you the game in this tank. And an extra 27 mils of pen is massive numbers. That's really, really big numbers. You also want to run enhanced gun lane drive and vertical stabilizer, because your body gun handling is terrible. The thing's got horrible gun handling. It's got TD style, big derpy TD style gun handling. I'd go calibrated shells, protected modules, improved optics. Next step is to get your armor. Next step after that, I'd probably go with enhanced gun lane drive, and then your improved control to allow for better traverse. I mean, you've got 30 degrees of traverse. It's the same as an E5. It's the same as an IS4 kind of thing. It's like a degree under an E5. Really, it's what got the best armor in the game just about. It's going to be ridiculous. Yeah, the top speed, have a look at this, it's 50 kilometers an hour. 50 kilometers an hour. Crazy, crazy strong armor plate, armor profile, and a big 120mm gun. Like, good luck with that. Enjoy your time seeing about 10 of these every game. There is an interesting thing though. They're talking about limiting the number of tanks to 4 that you'll be having of the same vehicle type. So hopefully that will have some effect on the number of IS-7s in game. If I'm honest to goodness going to talk about what I would be running then, well, a lot of people love the 215B. I don't. I just don't love it. I really don't. I really like this tank, the AMX-50B, but again, I can't in good conscience say that this is the tank I'd be running. After the IS-7, sadly, I'd probably run the IS-4. Crazy armor profile again, great side scraper, very, very mobile tank. Look, it's only 43 kilometers an hour and 32 degrees of traverse with all the spare parts. And I spent spare parts on these tanks first. I absolutely just grabbed them and put them on this because I had a feeling heavies were going to be the new meta. I think the E100 and the mouse will both do better than expected, depending on if you've got the spare parts to buff up the mouse's armor and its mobility. But the E100 has quite a nice build for this. The big 150 that it runs is an intimidating thing, and if you can get your neck ahead in a game of supremacy or something like that, and then defend with a big bunch of TDs and an E100, it becomes quite monstrous. And if you've got an added bonus to your armor and everything in this thing, it's really, really strong. Just so you know, again, all about the gun, trying to improve that horrible gun handling. Yeah, very much the same loadout as you're going to run on an IS-7. And then maybe the E5. I think the E5 is a unsung hero. The last one I'll be running would be the T57. Jeez. You could run the 215B or the AMX-50B, but you're going to have a gentle hand on the wheel and know what you're doing. So there you go, guys. That's ratings battles. Leave any ideas or questions or thoughts you want in the comments below. That's great. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and generally spread the love around. I really appreciate all the support, and you guys are pretty cool. So until next time, look after yourselves and stay safe on the battlefield.